الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال الله تعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. وقال الله تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, my last few khutbas here in this mosque were spent looking at a very profound hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A dua that the Prophet taught us to say, a dua that we all need in times like this, a dua that was prescribed by the best doctor, Al-Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a sahabi by the name of Abu Umama radiallahu ta'ala anhu sitting in the masjid outside of the times of prayer, stressed, worried, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, Ya Abu Umama, what's going on? And Abu Umama said that I have a lot of stress, I have a lot of things going on in my life, I have a lot of debt. And the Prophet ﷺ taught him to say a particular dua once in the morning, one pill in the morning and one in the evening. And that's the famous dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan wa a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal wa a'udhu bika min al-jubni wal-bukhl wa a'udhu bika min ghalabati ad-dayn wa qahr al-rijal. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from worry and grief. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from incapacity and laziness. I seek refuge in you from cowardice and miserliness. And I seek refuge in you from being overcome by debt and being put in subjection or being overpowered by men. And because of the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was given jawami' al-kalam, the ability to say a lot in just a few words, it was too much of a hadith. The meanings behind this hadith were far too many for one khutbah. Last month we explored al-jubn, cowardice and what that means in Islam. The month prior, we explored incapacity and laziness, al-ajz wal-kasal. And the month prior, we looked at worry and grief. In this khutbah, we're going to continue where we left off. And that is the sixth item in this dua, and that is al-bukhl, miserliness. What is bukhl? What is miserliness in Islam? Is bukhl, or to be bakhil, like that guy I knew in high school who, if he lent you 13 cents, would write that down in his phone and come back to you a year later saying, I'm just reminding you of 13 cents that you owe me? Is that what it means to be bakhil or stingy in Islam? What exactly is bukhl? What exactly does it look like? And what's the cure for this deadly disease? It's exactly what I want to talk about in this khutbah with you all today. In this dua, in Islam, definition of bukhl, stinginess or miserliness, as defined by Abraham al-Asfahani, he says, imsakul muqtarayat amma la yahiqqu habsuha anhu. That miserliness is withholding possessions from where they rightfully should not be withheld. Miserliness is withholding possessions from where they rightfully should not be withheld. Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, when defining al-bukhl, he adds, whether yujibuhu al-shar' or al-muru'ah, whether that be required by the legislation, the shar', or common decency. Bukhl, miserliness, in Islam includes many things. And I want to focus on just three things that are included in this deadly disease of bukhl. The first one is tarku ada' al-wajibat al-maliyah, neglecting financial obligations. Neglecting financial obligations. And at the top of this list is not paying zakat. Unfortunately, there are many people in our community that choose not to pay zakat. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. Allah says about those who don't pay the zakat, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Give good news, in a sarcastic way, give good news of a painful torment to those who hoard gold and silver and do not spend it in Allah's cause. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُم هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. The day will come when their treasure will be heated up in the fire of hell. The same zakat that you withheld and did not want to pay, the same wealth will be used as a torment and punishment against you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. The day will come when their treasure will be heated up in the fire of hell, with their foreheads, their sides and backs branded with it. It will be said to them, this is the treasure you hoarded for yourself. Now taste what you have hoarded. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Another thing included in neglecting financial obligations is taking care of your family. There are some individuals who hate buying Eid gifts for their family. There are some people in our community who hate buying groceries even for their families. Bukhl, stinginess for their own families. There's somebody I know who used to work at an Islamic school in the greater Toronto area. I'm not going to mention the name of the school for privacy reasons. And grade 8 class. There was an anonymous Q&A. And one of the girls, she wrote to this instructor, and I have the paper with me that this girl wrote a few years ago. This is from our own community. The sister, she says, I'm always running away from home and trying to kill myself. My dad makes over $1,000 a day, but he has never paid for anything of mine. A girl in grade 8. What can I tell this girl? Well, honestly, what can we tell a girl in grade 8 who sees her father making so much money and he chooses not to spend on her? What's going to happen is she will find another man who will spend on her. And what are you going to say at that point? When things go south, when things go bad, you come back to that mess and say, my daughter's messed up. She's with this man, she's with that man. But when you have the opportunity to take care of your own daughter and spend on her, she's grade 8. Grade 8 girl. My father makes $1,000 a day. And I have to think of an excuse, something to make her feel good. There are many youth in our neighborhood, boys and girls, who are practically orphans. Practically, they are orphans. Their fathers, their parents are around, but they're practically orphans. How many wives do we hear complaining about men who don't want to spend on them? We're talking the necessities. We're not talking about this fancy bag or this clothing, just spending on family. Something many wives complain about. And there's so much reward in taking care of one's family. The Prophet ﷺ says, in the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, إِنَّكَ لَن تُنْفِقَ نَفَقَةً تَبْتَغِي بِهَا وَجْهَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا أُجِرْتَ عَلَيْهَا حَتَّى مَا تَجْعَلُ فِي فَمِّ امْرَأَتِكَ. Prophet ﷺ said, you will be rewarded for whatever you spend for Allah's sake, even if it were a morsel, a piece of food which you put in your wife's mouth. There's reward in spending on your family. Na'udhu billahi min al-bukhl. The second thing included in bukhl is raddu sa'il, turning away from the beggar. And shaitan, he plays with people. You tell the person there's a family in need, and you'll have this person say, you'll hear people say, let the government take care of them. Why are you coming to me? Or there's a family in need, and they'll say, isn't there welfare? There's a family in need. And somebody will even have the audacity to say, nobody helped me when I was broke. This is bukhl. We tell them there's an orphan that is in need of help, and they say, life sucks. You gotta figure it out. Go hustle, go work. Na'udhu billahi min al-bukhl. Some people, they lose trust in everyone asking for money. You'll hear them complaining about this charity and that charity, and this charity is lying, and this person is lying. They don't actually need the money. Everyone's lying. But you're truthful? MashaAllah. There are some, unfortunately, who let months go by without donating a single penny. The third thing I want to share with you all that's included in bukhl, as the scholars mentioned, is tark al-biyafa. Neglecting hospitality, not hosting people correctly. And some of us here, unfortunately, we didn't get our etiquettes from Islam. Some of us, we seem to have gotten our etiquettes from perhaps the British or something. And there's a phrase that unfortunately we hear far too often. A phrase that sounds amazing. The words are amazing, but the meaning behind it is not Islamic. And that is, when we host somebody, we tell them, make yourself at home. What does that mean? Make yourself at home means you take care of everything. You grab whatever you need, etc. Islam teaches us to hope you are hosting them. You bring them the drink. You bring them the food. Not make yourself at home. What is that? That's not Islamic. This is my home, and I'm gonna treat you like a king. I'm gonna host you the way Islam taught me to host people. I remember there was a brother, I had a meeting at his house one early morning. And I'm a coffee guy. I need my coffee. Allah forgive me. One early morning, 8 a.m. or so, I didn't have my coffee. I had to rush to this brother's house. And this is a quote-unquote practicing brother, as we say. I went to his house. I really need coffee. He's talking, I can't hear him. Words are coming out of his mouth, nothing's registered. I'm looking at him, and there's a coffee machine behind him. And he said to me, Dirie, you want coffee? My eyes lit up. I said, yes, yes. And he said to me, the machine's over there. Go make it yourself. Go make it yourself. I wouldn't do that. I looked at him and said, never mind, I don't want it. There's people that don't know how to host. There's people who really don't know how to host other people. Inshallah, we'll have a whole khutbah dedicated on hosting another day. Inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about miserliness. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And whoever is saved from selfishness, or saved from the selfishness of their own souls, it is they who are truly successful. We don't have time to explain the difference between shuh and bukhl. This verse is talking about shuh, they're very similar terms. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that whoever is saved from that, then they are truly successful. Allah tells us that the cheap person, the miserly person, will never, no matter how much they save in their bank accounts, they are not successful. It's when you spend, that's when you're successful. It's when you spend that you are saved from the punishment. The Prophet ﷺ told us, "Ittaqu ash-shuh." Beware of stinginess. فَإِنَّ الشُّحَّ أَهْلَكَ مِنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ حَمَلَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنْ سَفَكُوا دِمَاءَهُمْ وَاسْتَحَلُّوا مَحَارِمَهُمْ. Beware of stinginess, because it destroyed those who were before you. It incited them to shed blood and treat the unlawful as lawful. And the Prophet ﷺ said about bukhl, he said, وَأَيُّ دَاءٍ أَدْوَى مِنَ الْبُخْلِ. What illness is worse than miserliness? What illness is worse than miserliness? Bukhl, dear brothers and sisters, is nothing more than Khutba dunya. The reason behind stinginess, miserliness, is excessive love of the dunya. Khutba dunya, love of the world, is, as it comes in the hadith, Khutba dunya ra'su kulli khati'ah. It is the cause, the main reason for every sin. Love of the dunya. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ta'isa abd al-dinar, wa abd al-dirham, wa abd al-qatifa, wa abd al-khamisa, in u'tiya radiya, wa in lam yu'ta lam yarda." Cursed is he who is the slave of the dinar, their currency, slave of the dollar. Cursed be that person. The slave of the dirham and the slave of the cloak bordered with silk. If he is given anything, he will be satisfied, but if he is not given anything, he is displeased. And Allah tells us, "Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha." The shaitan threatens you with poverty. Shaitan threatens you with poverty and commands you to do foul, shameful deeds, meaning of stinginess. Shaitan promises poverty, and unfortunately some of us choose to not give by believing in what he says. Shaitan promises poverty, and far too many of us fell for that trap of shaitan. نعوذ بالله من البخل. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, now that we've identified, diagnosed, figured out what the disease is, let's now discuss the remedy, the cure for this deadly disease. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala mentions in Al-Arba'in, he says, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ دَوَاءَهُ مَعْجُورٌ مُرَكَّبٌ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ وَالْعَمَلِ. He says the remedy for miserliness is a compound mixture of knowledge and action. Knowledge and action. As for knowledge, he says it is to understand the destruction that miserliness brings in the hereafter and the disgrace it causes in this world. Before the hereafter, nobody likes a miserly person. There's disgrace in this world before the hereafter. Number two, he says, it is to understand that wealth, if it even remains, does not follow a person to the grave. You have to realize, no matter how much you have in your bank account, it's not going to be with you when you're 6 feet under. It's not going to follow, no matter how much money you have. The only currency that works in the hereafter is good deeds. He says it is to understand that wealth, if it even remains, does not follow a person to their grave. Rather, wealth belongs to Allah, who has enabled a person to have it so that they may spend it on the most important matters. وَأَمَّا الْعَمَلِ. As for action, he says, وَأَمَّا الْعَمَلِ فَهُوَ أَنْ يَحْمِلَ نَفْسَهُ عَلَى الْبَذْلِ تَكَلُّفًا. As for action, it is to force oneself to give, even if it requires effort. Meaning, fight yourself, fight your nafs. Start small if you have to. Takallufan. Go out of your way, push yourself, force yourself, convince yourself to give for the sake of Allah. وَلَا يَزَالُ يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ حَتَّى يَصِيرَ لَهُ عَادَةً. And he should continue doing this until it becomes a habit for him. And Imam Ghazali goes on to explain that at the start, he can do this by tricking himself into giving. Tricking himself into giving. Give it, perhaps use a euphemism or a fancy name. Some people, they don't like donating. Call it whatever you want to call it. A grant, I'm a philanthropist. Whatever it is, use a fancy word if you want to convince yourself to give. Whatever it takes to convince oneself, you should start with that and then work your way out of that so that it's purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not being bakhil, and I'll end with this, brothers and sisters. Not being bakhil doesn't mean that you always give to every single person at every single moment. Imam al-Sha'rani rahimahullah ta'ala came across a beautiful quote I want to share with you on, as I mentioned, we'll conclude with this. He says, فَعُلِمَ أَنَّ الدُّنْيَا إِذَا خَرَجَتْ مِنْ قَلْبِ إِنسَانٍ لَا يُتَصَوَّرُ وُقُوعُهُ فِي الْبُخْلِ الْمَذْمُومِ أَبَدًا بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ. So it is understood that if the love of the world leaves a person's heart, it is unimaginable for him to ever fall into reprehensible miserliness after that. Once this love of the dunya leaves your heart, you're not going to be bakhil anymore. But that does not mean you're not going to, it doesn't mean you're always going to give. He says, وَإِنَّمَا يَمْنَعُ بِالْحِكْمَةِ كَمَا يُعْطِي بِالْحِكْمَةِ. And he only withholds due to wisdom, just as he gives due to wisdom. Sometimes not giving is better. Sometimes giving is better, but it's based on wisdom. تَخَلُّقًا, he says, تَخَلُّقًا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Cultivating the meanings of Allah's names in one's character. فَإِنَّهُ تَعَالَى سَمَّى نَفْسَهُ الْمَانِعُ وَلَمْ يُسَمِّي نَفْسَهُ بَخِيلًا. For he, the exalted Allah, has named himself Al-Mani'. Allah is Al-Mani', the withholder. And he never named himself Bakhil. Understand that, he says. Allah prevents, withholds sometimes. But Allah never described himself or named himself Bakhil, but he did call himself Al-Mani. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan, wa na'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal, ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل